Namaste friends, I am Jayalakshmi Ravichandran signing in on behalf of Magic Needles. I have come here with the fifth part of the Summertop CAL. Last week we had completed up to the DC row. Now what we are going to do is give shape to the front and make it even. So to make it even, we need to make a triangular design here at this end as well as a triangular design in this end. We are going to use the same stitches, same rows, but offset. So I'll show you how to go about it. On both the ends we have to make triangular part so that we make a flat piece in the front. The circle will become a flat piece in the front and we can go about increasing. Before that, let me tell you, if you want to increase the length of your front here, like if you have to do a bigger size, you can increase 1 or 2 rows of this and go ahead. Okay, 1 or 2 rows of this portion and go ahead with the pattern. Now what we're going to do is, we are going to make 3 loops and then from here 5 loops and then 7 loops. So that way what will happen is this will become a triangular piece, and then we increase with the shell part and this design part and then go about the chains again to the other end. But we are going to work this triangular part separately on both the sides. To do that, pick up 6 stitch markers or 7 stitch markers and place them as this 1, 2 and 3. After 3 you place a stitch marker. 4 and 5. After 5th stitch place a stitch marker. 6 and 7 place a stitch marker. When we are working the shells, we will be beginning from the 8th one. Okay, you can place a stitch marker here. So 4 stitch markers on this side. Similarly here on this side also 1, 2 and 3 a stitch marker here. 4 and 5 a stitch marker here. 6 and 7 a stitch marker here, and the 8th one here. So we are going to work from here to here, then from here to here, and then from here to here, and then go back and then continue with the pattern. Okay, so what we are going to do now is we completed at this point. So you can chain 3 and turn, chain 2 more, and you are going to place a DC in this center, that is between these 2 DCs 1, 2 and 3, 4, between the second and the third. Chain 3, one, 2 and here we have placed. So forget about this. These 4 you take. Now chain 3. Here we are going to make one SC, that is these 4, between these 4 DCs, leaving 2 here, 2 here, we are going to make one SC. So we have made 1, 2, 3 loops, and we need to make 5 loops here. To go over to this place, we are just simply going to stitch mark. Remove the stitch marker from here. We are going to simply do slip stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, remove the stitch marker, and 10 here. You here simply chain 4, turn your work, in this place, that is not here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 we are going to make. In this, that is leaving these 4 DCs and the next 2 DCs of the next shell. In between here you make 1 single crochet. So tighten it. If you feel this is very loose, you can make 1 more single crochet here. Chain 4, single crochet on this single crochet, henceforth chain 3, DC here on DC, chain 3, DC on DC here, chain 3 and DC on the third chain over here. So now let me place it and show you. Can you see this small triangular shape forming here? So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 shells here. Again chain 3, turn your work, chain 3 more and place a DC on DC here. Chain 3, place a DC here, chain 3, place a DC on this SC here, chain 3, SC on SC here, chain 3, SC on SC here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we need 2 more, chain 3, SC over here in between, chain 3, 1, 2 and 3, SC over here. We are having 7 spaces here. Now in the 8th what we are going to do is chain 3 and slip stitch in between here. So next we are going to do the shells. When we come back, chain 1 and turn, SC in the same space and chain 1 and an SC in this chain space. In the next chain space 3 DC, chain 3, 3 DC, then SC in the next chain space, three DC, chain 3 DC shell in the next. That is what I am doing now. Then SC here, sorry, 1 2 3 3 chain, SC here, and again we end up with a shell in the last chain. Here chain 1 and do an SC here. So this is how it looks now. We've completed here with an SC. Now chain 3 and turn, and in the middle DC you make an DC here. Now chain 3, SC in chain space, 3 chain space, chain 3, 2 DC together. So we make one incomplete DC in the middle DC of this 3 DC set, and another in the middle DC of these 3 DC set, and complete. So this is 2 DC together. Again chain 3, SC over here, chain 3, 2 DC together, chain 3, SC, chain 3, 2 DC together, chain 3, SC in chain space, chain 3, and here we are going to do 1 DC, half DC here, and another half DC on this SC, and sorry, something has gone wrong here. Chain 3, yarn over, insert your hook here, incomplete DC, then on this here, incomplete DC over here, chain 3, and place an SC over here at this particular point. So we've come to the end of this row here. Now we have 9 chain 3 spaces, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, and in the first 2 we are going to do only SCs, and in the rest we are going to do the DCs. So let's go about it now. Chain 1 and turn, turned, SC in the same place, and 3 SCs in the chain 3 space here. And place an SC on 2 DC together here. 3 SCs in chain 3 space. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, yeah. And 1 SC here in 2 DC together. Now we are going to place 3 DCs here in the chain 3 space. And 1 DC on 2 DC together. Again 3 DCs in chain 3 space. And DC on SC here. Continue till the end. I will meet you at the end. Now we have come to the end and I have placed my last DC in the third chain of the turning chain here. I'm going to place a stitch marker to secure it and leave it like this. And now I'm going to do the same process in this end and then get back to you. Like it is 3 chains, 5 chains, 7 chains, and then the shells, and then we do the other 2 DC together row and the shell row and get back. Okay, till this we have to do it on the other side too. 3, 5, 7 shell and the next row of 2 DC together and then the DC row. So much if we do, we get this shape and it will straighten out. You can see that it is straightening out. So we are going to make a straight front from the circular front. So let me meet you at the end, or when you complete the other side. I will also complete the other side and meet you at that particular point and then let you know what I'm going to do next. And you may use the other yarn ball instead of snipping this off or cutting this off. If you don't have another yarn ball, you can cut this off and work. Otherwise you use another yarn ball of the same yarn and complete the other end. I have completed the straightening out part on the other side also. So now we can cut this yarn off. So you will see that both are straightening out the dress in the front. The front part will get straightened out when we work. Now go back to the other side where we had put the stitch marker to secure it. Remove the stitch marker. Henceforth, we are going to repeat these rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rows we will be repeating. That is the chain space rows, then you have the chains row, and then you have the shell row, and then you have the 2 DC together row, and then the DC row together. These many rows we will repeat to increase the length of the front. So I will demonstrate one set for you all. All these stitch markers have no work now. Let me remove them all. Just I'll have one stitch marker with me in case I need to secure it somewhere. Yeah. You can either chain 5 or chain 5 and turn, or turn, make a DC here. chain 2, skip 2 DCs and place a DC on the next DC. That is how it is going to be. Chain 2, skip next DC on DC, chain 2, skip 2 DC on DC, continue till this point. I'll meet you here. We have come to where we have worked the SCs. There also we skip 2 stitches and then do the DC. Chain 2 I have done already. Skip 1, 2, and in the third you place your double crochet. Chain 2. Again skip 2. In the third you will place your double crochet. Chain 2. Skip 2. Place your double crochet here. And continue. Chain 2, skip 2 and place instead of skip this and continue with your DC here, so that you reduce the gap. Even otherwise there is a lot of gap, so instead you need not do these 2 chains. Directly place a DC here, it won't make much of a difference. Then chain 2, skip 2 and a DC here. So remember to do the same thing the other side too. Chain 2, skip 2 and a DC here. Chain 2, skip 2 DC here. Okay, continue till the other end. When you reach the other end, I will meet you here at this particular point. I have reached the other end. Remove the stitch marker here. I have done 2 chains here. I'll place my DC. Now I'm not going to do any chain space, but I'm going to directly do a DC on this SC over here, because this will give a even gap similar to the one we had done at this particular end. Okay, now chain 2, skip 2 DC and continue till the end. I'll meet you at the end. I'll do one more time and show you. Chain 2, skip 2 stitches, DC here. Chain 2, skip 2, DC here, and continue till the end. I will meet you at this particular end here, at this particular point. We have come to the end of this row here. This next row is also a repeat of the same as we did here. Either chain 5 and turn, or a DC, chain 2 and turn. DC, turn and chain 2 and then do a DC here. Then chain 2 DC, chain 2 DC, place DCs over DCs with chain 2 spaces in between them. That is what we are going to do in the next row. I will just begin and show you how I am going to go about it. So I am going to chain 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, turn my work, turn like a page of a book. I am going to place my DC on DC here. Again chain 2, DC on DC, chain 2, DC on DC. So this is the same as the previous row, repetition. Now we are going to, the previous row we placed, we skipped 2 DCs and placed. Now here we are going to do chain DCs over each of the DCs with chain 2 space in between them. So I'll meet you at the end of this row. Repeat the same stitch all through. Remember, we did not give any chain space between these 2 stitches. Here what we are going to do is chain 2. I'm going to place a DC here and then chain 2, place a DC on this DC as well. Chain 2 and continue with placing DCs on every DC till the end. DC over here, chain 2, DC over DC. I shall meet you at the end here. We have completed this second part of it. Repeat here. We have completed this row. The next is SC and chain row. So chain 1 and turn. Place an SC on the same stitch here, the very first. Chain 4, SC on top of DC. Chain 4, SC on top of DC. Chain 4, SC on top of DC, and continue till the end. I shall meet you at the end of this row. We have come to the end of this row, and I have placed my last SC here. Now ensure that you have odd number of chain spaces so that you begin and end with the same way, the same number of stitches. Okay, so now I have 63 here in my work. It may differ according to the number of chains that you have taken in the beginning. Now make a chain 3. This is the first DC, and then chain 1 and place 3 DCs here. Okay, I have done half shell here. Then in the next I am going to do my SC in the chain space, and then 3 DC, chain 3, 3 DC shell here. 1, 2, 3 DC, chain 3, 3 DC. Okay, now in the next I am going to place my SC. This is the repeat for this particular row. So in one chain space we are going to do, when we did SC here, in the next we will place the 3 DC chain 3 DC shell, SC, 3 DC chain 3 DC shell, SC, and we complete the row here. When we come to the end, at this particular point, that is under this chain space, we will place 3 DC, chain 1 and a DC on the SC here. Okay, I'll meet you at the particular end here. I've come to the end of this row. I've placed my SC in this chain space. Now 3 DC here, chain 1 and place a DC on this SC here. So we come to the end of this row. We have completed this row. Now let's see how we go about the next row. Chain 1 and turn, chain 1 and turn, place an SC over here, chain 3, then we are going to work 2 incomplete DCs together, 2 DCs together. This is 1 second DC here, incomplete DC over it, then 1, 2, 3 in the middle DC, incomplete DC, and complete it. Chain 3, place an SC in chain 3 space here. Again chain 3, 2 DCs together, chain 3, SC over here. So this is a repeat here. We place SC in chain 3 space between the 3 DC sets, and we work 2 DC together, combining the middle DCs of 3 DC sets. That is what we are going to do in this row. Repeat this pattern till the end. I shall meet you at the end of this row. 2 DCs together, and SCs are separated with 3 chain spaces. This is very important because in the next row we are going to work DCs in these 3 chain spaces. Okay, don't never forget to make the 3 chain space between the SC and the 2 DC together. We've come to the end of this row, and I have placed my last stitch here. Now chain 3 and turn your work. This is a DC row. So in the first chain space, I am going to place only 3 DCs here. In this row, we are not working on the 2 DCs together. In every chain space, henceforth, we are going to place 4 DCs. Four in each chain space till the last but one. In the last we will place 3 DC and then place a DC on the last stitch over there. So 4 DCs, and in the next chain space 4 DCs. Sorry. So I'll meet you at the end of this row. We are going to do, we got 4 DCs in every chain space. Place 4 DCs in every chain space. I will meet you at the end of this row at this particular point here. We've come to the end of this row. In this chain space, I'm going to place 3 DCs. So I've placed 3, and the last DC I'm going to place it over here on the stitch. So this completes this pattern of these many rows here. So you need to repeat these rows to increase the length. So for my dress I have repeated twice. So chain space, that is the net space, net stitch twice, and then the chains with SCs, and then the shell, and then your chain and then 2 DC together and SCs and then the DC row. So this completes your one repeat. This is the pattern repeat, and this pattern repeat you can repeat it 2 more times to get the for large size and medium size, and if you want it till longer you can repeat it thrice or 4 times even, as per the length required. Okay, so I shall complete it and then meet you in part 6, wherein I will deal with the back part. So this is the pattern repeat. You need to understand. Here we do a DC or chain 5, skip 2, DC, chain 2, skip 2, DC, chain 2, skip 2, DC, all across. That is what we are going to do here. And then the next one is very simple, a DC or chain 5, DC on DC, chain 2, DC on DC, chain 2, DC on DC, chain 2, DC on DC. That is what it's going to be. And then in the next row it is going to be SC, chain 4 SC, chain 4 SC, chain 4 SC, and all these SCs are placed on the DCs. And the following row you're going to have the shell, DC or chain 3, chain 4 and 3 DCs in the first chain space, and then SC in next, then 3 DC, chain 3, 3 DC shell, that is repeat. And then in the following round we are going to do we begin with SC here and then do chain 3 and 2 DCs together, chain 3 SC, chain 3 2 DCs together, chain 3 SC, chain 3 2 DCs together. That likewise we repeat. And the next one is all DC rows, wherein on all chain spaces we are going to make 4 DCs, except the first and the last, wherein we make the 4th DC in the last of the stitches and the first DC in the very first, and in the chain space we make 3 DCs. This is how the repeat is, and you repeat it. I will meet you in part 6, wherein the front part would be shown as a completed piece, and then I will show you how to work the back part, and that will complete our summer top. In the 6th part I will show you how to join too. Thank you friends for watching. Have a nice day. Bye for now.